from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, Text 11. Avyaktarasa sindhunam bhutanam niranasya cha udaram viditam pumso hridayam manasa padam avyaktarasa sindhunam bhutanam niranasya cha udaram viditam pumso hridayam manasa padam avyaktarasa sindhunam bhutanam niranasya cha udaram viditam pumso hridayam manasa padam Avyakta, the impersonal feature. Rasa sindhunam, of the seas and oceans of water. Bhutanam, of those who take birth in the material world. Niranasya, of the annihilation. Cha, also. Udaram, his belly. Viditam, is known by the intelligent class of men. Pumsa, of the great personality. Hridayam, the heart. Manasa, of the subtle body. Padam, the place. Translation. The impersonal feature of the Lord is the abode of great oceans, and his belly is the resting place for the materially annihilated living entities. His heart is the abode of the subtle material bodies of living beings. Thus it is known by the intelligent class of men. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 8:17 to 8:18, it is stated that according to human calculations, one day of Brahma is equal to 1,000 ages of 4 millenniums, 4,300,000 years each, and the same period is calculated to be his night also. A Brahma lives for 100 such years and then dies. A Brahma, who is generally a great devotee of the Lord, attains liberation after such a downfall. The universe, called the Brahmanda, or the round football-like domain controlled by a Brahma, is thus annihilated, and thus the inhabitants of a particular planet or of the whole universe are also annihilated. Avyakta, mentioned here in this verse, means the night of Brahma, when partial annihilation takes place and the living entities of that particular Brahmanda, up to the planets of Ramaloka, along with the big oceans, etc., all repose in the belly of the Virat Purush. At the end of Brahma's night, the creation again takes place, and the living entities reserved within the belly of the Lord are let loose to play their respective parts as if being awakened from a deep slumber. Since the living entities are never destroyed, the annihilation of the material does not annihilate the existence of the living entities, but until liberation is attained, one has to accept one material body after another again and again. The human life is meant for making a solution to this repeated change of bodies, and thereby attaining a place in the spiritual sky, where everything is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. In other words, the subtle forms of living entities take place in the heart of the Supreme Being, and such forms take tangible shape at the time of creation. Avyakta rasa sindhunam bhutanam niranasya cha udaram vidatam pumso hridayam manasa padam. The impersonal feature of the Lord is the abode of great oceans, and his belly is the resting place for the materially annihilated living entities. His heart is the abode of the subtle material bodies of living beings. Thus it is known by the intelligent class of men. Purusha Shukta confirmed. Last week I gave the class on the beginning of this chapter, and Purusha Shukta, very wonderful prayer offered in describing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Also we spoke a little bit about the Gayatri. Lord Brahma was initiated. What is that? You wanted to go closer. Unfortunately, I'm getting the shadow of the microphone on the page, but anyway. Now here also, as I mentioned about Lord Brahma, of course all these aspects of creation and different living entities are all described as connected to the Virat Purush. But if we look at the particular points being made here by Srila Prabhupada, especially about the different creations and annihilations and Lord Brahma. And this has been mentioned many times, the Sahasra Yugapayantam Mahayad Brahmano Vidur in Bhagavad Gita, the duration of Brahma's life. They're all different durations of life. Now even in Kali Yuga, we have description of the life of the human beings. Now in the former ages, the Satya Yuga, people lived a long time, 100,000 years. Prabhupada mentions that each age after that, the duration of life is reduced by 90%. So 100,000 years, and the next age, the Treta Yuga, if you take off 90%, what is the duration of life? How long did people live for? 10,000 years. 90%. And then in the next age, you take off 90%, then people live for 1,000 years. So before this age, people lived for 1,000 years. And before that, the previous age, people lived for 10,000 years. And before that, it was 100,000 years. And in this age, and now, currently, in Kali Yuga, well, it is said 100 years, but very rarely even we get someone living till they're 100. I think the life expectancy these days for men is what, like 70, 80 or something like that, and women perhaps a little bit older, a little bit longer. So all durations of life, the duration of life of living beings, and of course that's there for all species of life. Everyone has their 100 years according to their life. The 100 years of a mosquito is a lot different to our 100 years, and the lifespan of the demigods. Now the demigods, it is said that their one day is 6 months of our time. Of course there's different levels of demigods also. Some live longer than others. And so generally the demigods are categorized, they live for 36,000 years of the human beings. 36,000? Yes, something like that. And then others live longer still. There are different levels of demigods. The Manu, it is said he lives for over 300 million years. 300 of our years, 300 million of our years. And Lord Brahma, he lives for 311 trillion years. This is described by Prabhupada in the Bhagavad Gita. 311 trillion, 40 billion years of our years. But interestingly, Prabhupada describes in that purport that, in relation to eternity, even Lord Brahma's seemingly fantastic life of 311 trillion, 40 billion earth years is like the flash of a lightning flash. Nimesha, it's actually, there's a description, Nimesha, compared to the time of the Supreme Person, Nimesha is less than a second. This is described. Less than a second of the time of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's all, and the whole thing, all this lifespan, how long everyone lives, and the existence of plantations is all being watched by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is always awake to everything. Just like, some species of, some insects live such a short time, especially in the summer, you turn your light on, and in the night time all these insects fly around, and you come out in the morning and they're all dead on the ground. That was their life. Just overnight. That's how long they lived. And so we see all that. To them they had the whole life. But we can view that, but we can't. We're limited to our perspective of things. We can view lifespans that are much shorter than ours, and you can imagine that those who are living a lot longer, they view our life, demigods, manus. They see the demigods' lives. So many different demigods come and go in the life of the manu. And then you get higher up, the Brigu and all the higher sages, and then you go to the Brahma planet, and he just looks, it's like he's viewing everything. But as I said, the lifespan of Brahma is just like a lightning flash compared to eternal time, compared to the Supreme Personality of God. And so Krishna is viewing all these things, and he's always awake. There's one interesting point made by Srila Prabhupada in the 11th canto, one purport. He said that Krishna is always awake. We are always dreaming. We're always dreaming. We have different types of dreaming. He said when we're active in the and here the word mentioned is avyakta, unmanifest, and then avyakta becomes manifest. We come into life. And then, but that is also a dream because it's a non-reality. It's like a waking dream where, so sometimes you sit and you're awake and you just dream. It's a non-reality. What do they call them? Daydreams. Daydreams. You sit around and you dream about how you're a millionaire or something like that, and you've got to own a big house, but it's a non-reality. You're dreaming, and then of course at night. You go to sleep and then you dream. And then when everything is wound up, all these planetary systems, then of course, your life is over, then you go into another dream state. So actually, our whole existence in this material world, Prabhupada emphasizes that it's actually a dream. Either it's a waking dream, or it's a sleeping dream, or it's an unmanifested dream. You're not manifest anymore. Now it is said here there are different types of pralaya, different types of creation and annihilation. And it's always constantly in flux, always coming and going. So Brahma lives for 100 years and even he comes to the end of his life. And so here the description is given of partial annihilation. In that, if you read third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and also other sections also, description of all these, that when there's creation of planetary systems, there's creation of species of life, and all have birth and all live and all have death, even planetary systems. So there is there's a creation and then there's annihilation. There's a partial annihilation at the end of the day of Brahma. At the end of the day of Brahma. Actually, there's also, even before the end of day of Brahma, at the change of Manus, there is another partial annihilation of the change of Manu, the lower planetary systems. But at the end of the day of Brahma, it is said that, the description is given that there are 36,000 years of intense heat. 36,000 years. That heat comes from Ananta Sesh, the bottom of the universe, at the hoods. The fire comes up. It is said also, there's another description of the sun gets hotter and hotter. And also that from Lord Shiva comes from his third eye comes the flame. So 36,000 years of burning everything to a crisp. And if something didn't get annihilated, then there's downpour. Then there's downpour for another 36,000 years. So the Sambantaka clouds are called, downpour. We read about that in the story of the Govardhana Hill, how Krishna lifted Govardhana Hill to protect the inhabitants of Vrindavan from the wrath of King Indra. He sent the Sambantaka clouds. So the downpour comes. So along with the downpour, it comes down so heavy like pillars of rain comes down. Sometimes we get heavy downpours here, and within a few moments we experience here that it can be like a flood right outside our door. But the description of the pralaya is it comes down in columns, and not only that, but it's like a hurricane. There's devastating winds, as there was with the story of King Indra sent those Samvataka clouds. There's wind that comes in and annihilates it. So this is the description. There's heat and fire, and then there's downpour, the oceans, everything floods, the oceans rise up, everything becomes dissolved in that annihilation. So all the planetary systems at the end of the day of Brahma, up to the heavenly planets, are all under the water of devastation. So it is said at that time, they go after being dissolved in that water for some, everything, all the living entities, our bodies are gone, although actually a description is given that in that partial annihilation, the subtle body remains with the soul. There's one description like that. The gross outside body, that's dissolved, that dies. But the subtle body is still there. And it goes, everything, the planetary systems, they're all dissolved in the watery element, stays for some time, and then everything rests in the abdomen. This is mentioned here, the abdomen of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. So this is all very interesting. Now, that these points, these descriptions are given because, you know, we have to get a bigger perspective of what's going on than we have. We're totally absorbed in ourselves and our little universe. You know, our universe may be ourselves, our family, friends, this, that, the other, you know. And for most people it's quite small. I remember reading some time ago that there was some survey taken over a lot of people in different countries, and in general, the individual, you know, their friendships, you know, the circle of their friendships and sociality, especially intimate friends, is quite small. Quite small, 8 or 10, something like that, outside their own family. It's quite small. So, you know, other people may have a wider circle, but, you know, mainly people have a small circle of sociality. So, you know, we're tied up in that. And of course, you know, there are, you look at other species of life, you know, like the spider sometimes. You know, in the morning, you know, I see this up on my lawn up there, that you walk along and there's this, like, in the grass, there's this kind of like funny looking spider. It's a kind of spider web in the grass. And that's the life of that spider. He just lives there and he just waits there till something comes along and gets captured in there, and then he eats it. And that's his life. Great life. Not much going on there. Because he's thinking it's a full life. I'm having a full life here. I'm living in I made my little funnel spider web here, and, you know, a few things come along and I pounce on them and I eat them. Yeah, that was really good. Right? That's my life. They're fully absorbed. So, of course, they're just caught up in that. They're driven by their urges. The lower species, they're driven there. But the humans can come out beyond that. Generally, you know, we come out, people are born very conditioned, very kind of animalistic, but we can come out of it. And so these descriptions are given that, hey, there's something more going on in the universe than your little sphere of activities. And so we're absorbed in the micro, and this is the macro, going right up to Brahma and then going beyond Brahma to the position of the Supreme Personality of God. So he's awake to all these things, even though it is said he goes into a yoga nidra, and especially the Mahavishnu and everything. He's fully conscious of everything. And this is just a small aspect of the existence of the Supreme Personality of God. So Lord Brahma, very interesting, there's a nice description given in the Bhagavatam. We talked last week about the initiation of Lord Brahma. He tried to find the origin of his existence when he was born on top of the lotus flower. He went down, he couldn't find it. He heard the tapa go in to perform austerities. After some time, it is mentioned, especially in the third canto, that he, within himself, he had a vision within his heart. The Lord allowed him to see within his own heart himself as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu lying on Ananta Sesha. It seems to be, from the descriptions given, that so many stages of Lord Brahma's realization and initiation. I was describing last week how Lord Brahma was initiated. So first of all, after the tapasya, he, within his own heart, he couldn't see by his own effort, but when he went into the meditation, the nice description is given in the third canto, we'll read it in the next canto, how he saw within his heart Lord Garbhodakshaya Vishnu lying on Ananta Sesha. And then he saw all the water of devastation, he saw all that. And then after that, the Lord was pleased and began to speak to him. The Chakru Shloki. And then he told him to go into meditation again. Now, he meditated for 100 celestial years. And then when he had that vision of the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, the Lord gave him that vision, and then he spoke to him, and then he said, go into more. And that's I described last week, how he went meditating. He had the vision of the Vaikuntha and so on and so forth. After that time, he was initiated into the Gayatri by Saraswati and so on. So it's very interesting how everything develops. But when he is empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to create everything, everything is there in the abdomen of the Supreme Lord in a seed-like form. The living entities are there. The planetary systems are there in seed-like form. They come out through the lotus stem, through the lotus flower, into the body of Brahma. So Lord Brahma, that position is a very, very powerful position, and a very special living entity is chosen to be a Lord Brahma. And sometimes when there's no one qualified enough, the Supreme Personality of Godhead accepts that position of Lord Brahma, because no one's qualified. So he's very, very empowered. One description is that when he was empowered to again begin the creation, everything coming through his body, he distributed. Everything was already there, created by the Lord, the Shaga, and then this Shaga, Lord Brahma, distributed everything, and he was empowered to understand how to do it all. And so it came out in seeds through the lotus stem, and then through the flower in the body of Lord Brahma. And so everything went out again. Actually, it's mentioned that even Lord Brahma is so powerful, he was looking, when he was seeing the ocean of devastation and the wind, he feared it. It was so fearful. The waves were gigantic. But the Lord gave him the power to drink up the wind and dry up the ocean. Now I've read that. There's also another description how the heat coming from the lotus stem itself dried up the ocean and everything. So it seems to be a combination of Lord Brahma and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But anyway, all this is going on, and it goes on, and in the night, of course, at the night of Lord Brahma, everything is dark, and he goes to sleep. And there's some mention that he actually, he dreams of the Supreme Lord within his dream, but then when he wakes, he forgets everything again. He has had to be revived in his consciousness again, so on and so on. So the whole thing comes out, and then after the end of the life of Brahma, everything, right up to all the planetary systems, going right up to Lord Brahma's planet where he lives, and all the inhabitants on Lord Brahma's planet, everything comes back in to Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and the Garbhodakshay Vishnu goes into the Mahavishnu, and everything goes back into Mahavishnu. All this goes on in the breathing of the Lord Mahavishnu, and then comes out. So here it is mentioned that until one comes to liberation, one has to undergo all these creations and annihilations, planets, and then bodies, different bodies, repeatedly, over and over again. But the human life is meant for making a solution to this repeated change of bodies, and thereby attaining a place in the spiritual sky where everything is eternal, blissful, full of knowledge. So there's many different changes, different movements. One thing is constant, the Supreme Personality of God. One other thing is constant, our position as spirit souls. We're not annihilated as spirit souls. There are many people who think that when there's death, that we cease to be. We live our life. And of course some develop a whole idea, because we only have one life, we have to live it to the fullest, enjoy so many different things of the world, because that's it. When there's death, there's no existence to ourselves. Although people would like to believe that, some people just don't believe it at all. Actually, sometimes I ask this question in classes with new people. I say, well, I go around and say, I ask them, do you think there's, you come back again in another life? And some say yes, some say no. I say, but if you did come back in another life, what would you like to come back as? And I get all sorts of strange answers, Oh, I'd like to come back as my cat, because my cat has a really good life. It just hangs around all day, gets fed, sits around by the heater. I remember one lady, here many years ago, she said, I'd like to come back as a snake. Snakes are pretty cool. All different types of answers. But they don't really, they don't have any idea how things go on. And they kind of think there might be an afterlife, or they don't believe it at all, and so on and so forth. So, but here it's described very nicely, and understanding this and understanding our eternal position, then we're guided here through these descriptions and through these instructions in Srimad Bhagavatam, how to be situated and not be disturbed. All these changes, all these disturbances. Sometimes we're thinking we're happy, sometimes we're in distress, but how to remain unaffected, that takes a lot of knowledge from books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, a lot of guidance from the spiritual master, the acharyas, from all the Vaishnavas, and a lot of effort from ourselves to apply this knowledge in our lives and cultivate our Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, do we want to go through all this? Do we want to come back in another life? Again, Prabhupada always encouraged, no, try to go back home, back to Godhead in this life. Why come again for another life? Sometimes we think about that. We're going to come back. Do you want to come back again? And even if you came back as a human being, do you want to go? Do you want to be a baby again? You want to come back and be a baby? Go through the baby thing? So I mean, we see babies and coochie coochie coo, but do you want to do you want to have to live that again? Then you go through your childhood, it's you have a good time, but it's pretty rough. You go through school, you get picked on at school, bullies, this, that, the other, have to do exams. You want to have to go through all that again? Friends and enemies. You want to live all that, or you want to go back home, back to Godhead? Of course, some want to elevate to the heavenly planets. Sometimes in the old days we used to have the children come from the school and come to the class, and I remember asking one time, I said, would you want to, when you die, do you want to go to Krishna or do you want to go to be with Indra? And all the kids would say, we want to go with Krishna. Very good. Very good choice. Well, why do you want to go be with Krishna? Because Krishna's so nice. So yes, this is intelligent. So even a child can be have that intelligence. So yes, do we want to come back and go through all that? Of course, if one is a devotee, one can be in a devotee family. That's very wonderful. But still, Prabhupada always emphasised, yes, try to concentrate and engage in devotional service. That even in this, we can finish up our whole existence in the material world. I remember one lady in Adelaide. She said, "Well, if everyone became a devotee and went to Krishna, what would happen to this world?" I said, "Well, it'll be all over. That'll be a good thing. No need. We'll be with Krishna in the spiritual world." She was actually worried. Well, if everyone becomes a devotee, then what will happen to this world? She was kind of very concerned. So, ultimately, of course, there'll always be some who want to try their luck in the material world. So, Hare Krishna, I'll read this verse again. The impersonal feature of the Lord is the abode of the great oceans, and his belly is the resting place for the materially annihilated living entities. His heart is the abode of the subtle material bodies of living beings. Thus it is known by the intelligent class of men. I think we've got time for maybe one question. And anyone want to ask any question, comment? Yes.
The first one, Srila Prabhupada mentions Lord Brahma attains liberation, and other times we hear that when the living entity comes into the material world, it first takes birth as Lord Brahma. So it seems a bit odd if you can come in as Lord Brahma, then you're liberated as Lord Brahma. It could sound like you don't stand up.
Yeah, that's an eternal question, isn't it? That particular question. It's a kind of little inconceivable to understand how that goes on, because we're thinking with that, we're kind of in a linear way in our concept of time, and how Lord Brahma then how did it all fill up originally, if we all come to this universe, So somehow or other, it happens. I haven't read a description how becoming, but there is a description. But because having further desires, one goes down to the lower species of life. But at some point, the living entities. I have read that, although I've only read it once. There's not much reference to it. That the living entity comes as the Lord Brahma and is given a chance to come back again. So, Prabhupada does say generally, Lord Brahma is generally a great devotee of the Lord. Generally. But, there are living entities who come to that position who have grosser desires, and so I've read that also. So exactly how that happens, and it's all, I don't think we can understand from our particular point of view how that happens. All right, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.